What's up, duelists? My name is Patrick, and if you've been on YouTube recently, you probably saw the video that Paul from the APS team put out talking about his thoughts and insights of how he sees the Yu-Gi-Oh game evolving as it goes more and more into a digital format. And I thought it was so interesting, enough to the point where I wanted to share my own thoughts and opinions. So let's look at some of the talking points that he discussed in his videos, and again, I will share my thoughts as well. Now, before we do that, let's talk about the current landscape. If you are a Yu-Gi-Oh player who plays the physical card game, you're either playing in the OCG or TCG format. But the problem is if you want to play online on an official Konami platform, the most dominant platform that there is out there is going to be Master Duel. But as people quickly know, there are different ban lists between Master Duel, OCG, and TCG, which leads to a lot of players having some grievances about not being able to have consistency between, again, the format that they play physically and also Master Duel. So one of the things I think would be interesting to see is that if Master Duel over time, if Yu-Gi-Oh is going to evolve more and more into the digital realm, is being able to allow players to choose what formats they want to play when they're online. That way they don't feel like they don't have any options to pick from. Or the other option, which I think would be a little bit more quote-unquote hyperbolic, would be if they say, hey, there is going to be one format for all of these different types of platforms. So again, regardless if you're playing physical or digital, there is just only one type of format. I don't see that being the case, but again, I think the first one that I mentioned about being able to select what format you want to play in inside of the digital platform would be really cool to see. The next thing to talk about is the idea of best of 1 and best of 3. If you are currently playing in Master Duel, you know that when you're playing against an opponent, that single game decides who the winner is. However, when you are playing the physical card game, you actually go through 3 rounds, and the person who wins 2 out of those 3 rounds is actually the winner. Now, there is some argument which one of these is better. Some people do like the idea of just having best of 1 and that's it. Other people do like to show that there's more consistency in showing who is the better player when you're going best of 3. But again, either regard, it would be neat to see if Konami were to adapt any of these options inside of Master Duel, so that way, again, your players had the choice. Think of it this way. Imagine if you were playing another game like Mortal Kombat and you only had 1 round to play against the person. You really didn't have a chance to really know how that player operates their current character. Same thing when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! You're playing against an opponent and a deck that you're not familiar with, but once you have the opportunity to play against both the opponent and their deck, you can start to form a strategy of how you can approach them. So again, it would be interesting to see if Konami would be willing to adapt the idea of allowing players to choose whether they want to be involved in best of 1 or best of 3. Now, this next talking point might be controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I would love if Konami were to entertain the idea of doing online card trading. What do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. In the physical world, if you wanted to go and purchase cards, you can. You buy a pack and now you own a copy of those cards. And if you wanted to sell them, you could. You want to trade them with another player, that's fine too. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And that's the kind of thing I would love to see happen in Master Duel as well. Think about it this way. When you are playing on Master Duel and you open a pack, think about the current limitations that you have. You have either the option to keep your cards in your inventory, regardless whether you use them in a deck or not, or you just have to dismantle them, but you only get 1/3 of what they're worth in crafting points. Thus, it's not really doing anything for anyone. It would be great if you had some friends that you played online with who are trying to build different decks, and thus you can trade with them, thus providing a net positive value to the both of you. However, here's why I think this is not going to happen. Konami makes money off of Master Duel by selling gems, and they're hoping that players are going to want to build meta decks as fast as possible. So the quickest way for players to do that is to be able to buy gems. Now, to their credit, I will say that new players are able to get a lot of gems when they do the solo missions, and existing players can also get gems by, again, doing their dual pass or other monthly missions that are out there as well. But still, again, if the idea is to build up decks faster, trading might help players to do so, but again, it might not be in Konami's best interest. But here's the argument that I would say to Konami if you're listening. I would say if you were willing to sacrifice some profits today by allowing something like this to happen, you create a more loyal customer that is willing to stay with you for a longer period of time and thus willing to spend more money. All right, on to the next point. Another thing that Paul mentioned in his video is the fact that by moving to a digital format, it helps mitigate these issues with potential cheating and stacking and such. And I have to agree with that. As someone who is a new player coming back into the community, it has been difficult for me to learn the game. And not that I've really come across untrustworthy players or opponents, but sometimes you wonder if what they're telling you is the truth. So by being able to play inside of Master Duel, where it's fully automated, removing the human error, it makes it so that way it's a more trustworthy system to play with and just provides a level of transparency. So this is actually a plus for me as to why Yu-Gi-Oh! Should move more into a digital format. One thing that would be awesome to see if Konami would do something about the gaps in times for when new cards get released from the OCG to TCG and from TCG to Master Duel. Again, this is a problem that's happening regardless what format that you're playing, physical or digital. So many times I've talked to other players who said, oh man, I heard about this new card and I can't wait to play it, but I can't because I play this format. It would be better if Konami made it so that way you could just release a card and it was immediately out and available on all formats. Think like a simulator like YG Omega. When a card is announced, as soon as it's up in the YGO Pro deck database, you have access to play it, which would be really cool. So please, Konami, if there's anything on my wish list, it would be this. One last thing I want to talk about has to do with the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! Going into the digital world, but it doesn't actually have to do necessarily with Master Duel. No, instead it actually has to do with this VR game that Konami showcased not too long ago. If you saw the video, it looked incredible. It looked awesome. However, after having some time to be able to digest and see what happened in the video, I started to realize that this is more of a video game than an actual simulator. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the game, they're showing the monsters from the original anime, which is really cool. Don't get me wrong, I love the anime. I grew up on it. But again, you couldn't help but notice that they didn't do any kind of mechanics that you would see in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, such as Link summoning, XYZ summoning, and Synchro summoning. And I kind of understand why, because it probably would be a logistical nightmare to be able to do all those animations for those type of mechanics. I mean, think of it this way. There's more than, what, 11,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards out there? Imagine if Konami had to go through the trouble of trying to do animations for each one of those cards. It's a very cumbersome task. So here's what I think is going to happen instead. Konami is going to wait for once this game is released to see how well it does, because they want to see how many people like playing in VR. Not only that, but how many people are purchasing equipment to play VR, because again, I don't think VR is the most dominant way to play video games. Once they have enough people who have bought into both the game and also VR equipment, and they are able to make the assessment of saying, hey, this was successful. Now let's take Master Duel, our official simulator, and let's put it into the VR world. That's when I think we'll see it. And for me, if I had to guess, I would say that'd be probably another 5 to 10 years, but I don't know. So guys, that's my thoughts and opinions, but I would love to know what you guys think. Do you think I'm right with my predictions? And would you like to see some of the features that I talked about? If so, let me know down in the comment section below. Additionally, if you're looking for more Yu-Gi-Oh content, consider subscribing and also leave a like and check out this other Yu-Gi-Oh content here on this channel. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.